a co-host invite. If you can join me as a co-host, whilst I'm waiting for my other co-host, to come in, Ofutitus to join me. Right. So I'm waiting for Honorable Tendai Biti to join me. Honorable Professor Madhuku to join me. Honorable Senator Timba to also join me. So I'm just waiting to see if they come through in the space. I'll just make sure that you don't come in anonymously because I won't be in a position to be seeing you. So so let's make sure that you come in. Right, CDF, how you doing? CDF. Right. Yeah, I see Professor Madhuku, you followed me back. Thank you very much. Right. Alright, so let me just see if I can. Right, okay. Oh yeah. So is I was about to say, before the space, went down. Today we are going to be having a conversation with leaders from CDF, DCP, NCA, and we're going to be discussing on the way forward after disengaging. So I'm just waiting, for them, to come through. Right. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. So So I'm just waiting, for them, to come through. But maybe I'll just do the introduction, and then when they come in, I'll just get them straight in. But if I can ask Professor Madhuku to make a request, so that I can bring you in as speakers. Right, so that I can bring you in, and I'm still looking for them. See if I can. Right. So if you can repost this, ladies and gentlemen, it will be very much appreciated. Let us share the space. Let us get as many people to come through as possible. Right, because the issue that we want to be talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is a very important issue, and we are not just going to be analyzing, the current moment, but in a way, to kind of look at honoring a responsibility, the responsibility that every generation carries when it comes to defending the constitutional space that we inherit. Some of us, we are lucky enough that we wrote that constitution. We wrote this constitution. We were participants in the writing of this constitution, But we are at a very specific moment. A moment where some have described as a moment of madness, where we are about to witness the butchering of our constitution in real time. And this period where we are, the moment is a moment where supposed to be having, these public, hearings on Constitutional Amendment number 3. But what we have seen is events that have shaken many of us. Some predicted, these events, but they've shaken, many of us. Because what should have been a peaceful, open, and dignified process, I'm talking about a process where every Zimbabwean could just be speaking freely about the future of this constitution here. but instead, the whole environment has become a theater of intimidation. A lot has been happening. Honorable Tendai Biti, thank you very much. I see you. I've extended, the invite. We just saw many people, citizens, being blocked from entering venues. We saw journalists, we saw lawyers, we saw community leaders being assaulted or threatened. We saw dissenting voices being drowned out by orchestrated disruptions. And we are witnessing this in real time. But today is again an important moment where three major civic formations, I'm talking about the Constitutional Defenders Forum, the National Constitutional Assembly, and the Defend the Constitution platform, those major civic formations, they've taken a principled and a courageous stand. They have disengaged from the hearings, declaring the whole process fundamentally flawed and inconsistent with the spirit and letter of our Constitution. This is where we are. But one thing that I want to make clear, let us be clear, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about disengagement, we're not talking about silence. Nobody's being silenced here. Nobody's surrendering. And disengagement does not equal apathy. Honorable Tendai Biti, I've extended, the invite if you can respond to that, whilst I'm just, doing, this introduction. But what I've come to understand by what has happened in this moment is a constitutional act that has happened. The disengagement is a constitutional act. Because to me, it tells me that it is a refusal to legitimize a process that is excluding the very people the Constitution belongs to. It is a declaration that citizens cannot be reduced to spectators in matters that shape their rights, their governance, and their future. This is what these three formations have done. Because when we wrote that Constitution, we began by the words, we the people. We did not begin by the words, we the powerful, or we the politicians, but we the people. So when a process becomes violent, exclusionary, predetermined, we have a right, not that right, ladies and gentlemen, extend beyond it being a right, but becomes a duty to be questioning some of these things, that are happening. So tonight, as we gather here, we want to explore that duty. We want to ask, questions. What does a citizen-driven response look like when the formal processes fail to protect the dignity of Zimbabweans and of citizens? We are here to ask, how do we reclaim the constitutional space when fear is used as a tool to shrink it? And we are here to ask, what does it mean in practical terms to defend this constitution in 2026? Not you as a lawyer, not as a politician, but as a citizen. So tonight I am going to be joined by these esteemed honorables. And we are going to be talking about this because for a constitution to survive, it does not survive just because somebody has written that constitution, but it survives because there are people who have volunteered and who have stood up to be defenders of that constitution. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to first of all welcome Chieza Mlingwa. Chieza Mlingwa, see you right there. Welcome to the space. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for agreeing to join.
Now.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be, the co-host. Yes,
no pressure.
Yes, I work. So this is how we are going to be doing it. We are going to be asking our leaders, to come through and give them the platform to talk to us and we'll pose questions, to them, just to kick them off. And once they've all spoken, we'll try to get an opportunity to involve others as well. Will be coming in as speakers. So when we get to that stage, we'll get to announce how we are going to be handling, that stage. But at the present moment, since we've lost a little bit of time, I just want us to go straight into the conversation and welcome Honorable Tendai Biti to the space.
Well, good evening, Mkoma Jeza, and to the hundreds of listeners I can see on your platform. And good evening to the whole of Zimbabwe. I don't know whether you want me to go ahead and speak now or.
Yes, please. If you can, please go ahead and speak now and address us.
Yes. Yeah. As all of us know, Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 of 2026 was gazetted on the 16th of February 2026. The law is very clear that once that constitutional bill has been amended, has been gazetted, and in fact, the Constitution in section 328, subsection 3, uses the word immediately after the Speaker is given notice of a constitutional bill in terms of.
All right. Okay. I think as we are waiting for him.
Hello, Chieza.
Yes, I'm just thinking I could interject.
No. He's actually speaking.
All right. Can you hear him? Is it clear?
Yes. I'm quite sure. I think it is your mic. I think you need to come out and then come back again. Right, Honorable, if you can go ahead, let me deal with Cheza here so that I can see if I can. Yes. All right. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So I was saying that immediately after gazetting, Parliament must invite members of the public to express their views on the proposed bill in public meetings, and then through written submissions. That same provision is codified in section 141 of the Constitution. So since gazetting, notwithstanding the obligation on Parliament of inviting views, and notwithstanding the obligation on the state of ensuring that the Constitution is upheld and respected, there has been a complete closure of political spaces. There's been a complete shutdown of avenues where alternative voices, where those persons, bodies, and organizations that are known to be against this. So in the case of the CDF, where I'm convener, we've made and given police notifications in terms of Section 7 of the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act, over 20 meetings, which have all been turned down for one reason or the other. Only last week on Saturday, the 21st of March, I was in Mutare at a private residence, having a private meeting with our members, discussing the Constitution. We were raided, and as all of you know, Morgan Ngube and myself were arrested. So the same applies to the DCP. The same applies to the NCA, and the law is very clear that where you are having a meeting of 15 or less people, you don't need to notify the police. Where you are having a meeting of 15 or more, and as long as it's a political, a political party or any organization having its private meeting, you don't need any police notification. That's why when we have prayer meetings at our homes, when we have birthday parties, when we have Rora parties, we don't notify the police because that's exempt. But there's been a clampdown, a massive clampdown. There's been a massive clampdown at my law firm, for instance. It has been raided and blockaded on 3 times. There have been heavy assaults. Professor Madhuku almost lost his life after they beat him up, and many other people have been beaten up. So we knew that they were not interested in our views, but we thought that once the processes of public consultations began, and as they did on Monday, the 30th of March, there will be some modicum of decency. There will be some modicum of kungonyara also. There will be some elasticity. But as you know, the first meeting took place in the large city hall in Bulawayo. 2 youths from the province were abducted before these meetings. A student at Booth University was abducted before these meetings. When the meeting started, the chairperson was carefully choosing, and ZANU-PF people were lifting 3 hands, was carefully choosing those who she wanted to speak. Mayor David Coulthard ended up with a cramp right arm. I'm sure some of you have seen the pictures. He even stood up, and he's a tall man, 1.82 centimeters, and he was the only white man in that room, but they couldn't pick him up. And if you can't pick the esteemed mayor of a city, who are you going to pick? And I want to say that by 6 a.m., the large city hall was full of people that were buzzed from outside Bulawayo. When the residents, for instance, our own members of the CDF, went to the venue by 7 a.m., they couldn't get access because the place was full. And when the meeting finished, they saw over 20 buses and people getting into those buses being fed with the chicken slice, being fed with the chicken in, clearly not from Bulawayo. The same group were then transported to Ngeta. And I want to say that only 36 people gave evidence, gave testimony in the large city hall. The meeting then went to Ngeta. Same thing, ZANU-PF people being picked up. There were less than 5 people who stood up and were allowed to speak against the bill. One of them was Sheila, and we know what happened to her. They are hunting for her. They assaulted her after the meeting, and immediately after she had finished speaking, the meeting was disrupted. The pattern in Bulawayo was repeated in Chitungwiza. First at Dema, then at the Chitungwiza Aquatic Complex. At Chitungwiza Aquatic Complex, only 15 people spoke. At Ngeta, only 30 people spoke. That means that for the whole of Bulawayo, a city of 1 million people, less than 70 people spoke. In Dema, less than 40 people spoke. At Chitungwiza Aquatic Complex, 15 people spoke. Then I want to refer to outside Harare. In Chiredzi, they did not allow any person to say no to the bill. Gilbert Mtebuki, a former councillor, tried to speak. They refused him. He got out of the meeting. Tried to make a video recording. They followed him. They literally cut his legs, and as I'm talking to you right now, he's fighting for his life. His wife was so traumatized. I spoke to her in the afternoon today. She is so traumatized because she had never been exposed to such violence. A similar fate befell people who said no in Kwekwe. A similar fate befell people who said no in Montoro, Mamina or Mamin Mina. I can't quite remember the name of the place. But I come to Harare yesterday. Crowds, 20 buses went to Epworth. By the time that the residents of Epworth went to the meeting, it was full. Mapostori, who don't come from Epworth, hundreds of other people. There were 20 buses, again fed on chicken slice. The same crowd was then transported to the city sports center. At City Sports Center, they were now fed on chicken in. And we know, and we saw what happened. We were sitting in Bay 8. Instead of the chairperson simply saying we'll start from Bay number 1, 2, 3, 4, he didn't do that. He starts off with the Bay number 14 and then goes backwards to make Bay 8 the last one. By the time we got to Bay 8, the mic was literally stolen from our bay. Advocate Mahere was actually pushed trying to get the microphone, and thank God she was not hit. And if you see some of the videos, you actually hear people saying from Bay 8, Mike. These places are overcrowded. Just to make sure that ZANU-PF, I was literally sitting on the thing on Morgan Committee, and a lady who was on my left. It was packed, but it was clear that the atmosphere was charged. It was clear that the atmosphere was now a threat to to our lives. In my case, I had to be bundled by concerned citizens who got me out. I'm sure some of you have seen the videos. Doug Coltart was not so lucky. They followed him, they beat him up, they stole his phone. Most insultingly, they questioned whether he was a Zimbabwean or not. So it's quite clear that Parliament itself is not in control. The people who we were running around with the mics in the room were ZANU-PF people who knew who to give the mic and what that person was going to say. The message that is being said by these people is predetermined, is prepaid. It's either one who say the president needs to be given time to complete his projects. Either one will say 5 years is too short, we need to go to 7 years so that we can concentrate on development. Our politics are too toxic. Another one will say, well, we should let Parliament choose the president because South Africa does it. Another group will say, this constitutional bill, I just want it with all its clauses that opedza. Another one will read the speech and say, no, the constitution does not prevent a referendum. And so if you have been following these meetings, this is exactly the same testimonies that are being given across the length and breadth of country. In Mutare, at Mutare Bridge, a few kilometers from Mutare, some of you are not Kuwatsomba. Superman Wanzira was literally on the gate, preventing people from the venue. We had people like Honorable Saruwaka, people like David Chimini, members of the CDF, who were there. They left so frustrated because they couldn't get in. So it's quite clear that ZANU-PF is converted these parliamentary processes into ZANU-PF rallies, bar the regalia. So the NCA, the DCP, the CDF, we met this morning and came to the conclusion that we are disengaging from the parliamentary public process of consultation. And the reason we are doing so are the following. Number one, the process is not meeting the constitutional test. The process is not allowing Zimbabweans to express their views. The process is just a forum for ZANU-PF to reproduce its agenda, its vituperation, and its diatribe. Secondly, we have disengaged because of physical threats to persons. Kurambe tichingokwadzisa vana, so we are trying to mitigate the violence. Thirdly, we have disengaged so that we don't continue giving legitimacy to what is clearly illegitimate and fraudulent. The question, Jedza, that your listeners will ask is, what then is the way forward? The way forward is the following. Number one, we are demanding Parliament that it allows an alternative process owned and controlled by the citizens, which they themselves are free to attend. across the length and breadth of the country. We suggest a minimum of 5 meetings in every district. We suggest that this process should be carried on as long as people are still giving evidence. In 2013, we had more than 4,000 meetings, 4,000 meetings that gave rise to the 2013 constitution that we're trying to defend. The process of public consultation can and should go beyond May 16 when the 90 days are over. The 90-day period in Section 328 is just a minimum period of consultation. We suggest that this process of public consultation should be run and controlled by the church. People may have differences, but by and large, we trust the church. There should be professional recorders. There should be professional rapporteurs that will transcribe these meetings, as we did during the COPAC process. There should be, secondly, a public and transparent process of receiving evidence, of receiving a written, testimony, and that written testimony should then be reduced into a qualitative data. Who said what and on what issue? The constitutional bill has got 21 provisions. What are people saying, for instance, on clause 3, on clause 4, and on clause 21, which deals with the traditional leaders? So the process must be both quantitative and qualitative. So that's the demand we are making, a demand which we feel meets the constitutional imperator in section 141 and in section 328, subsection 4. Secondly, we require specific undertakings from Parliament that the President can't sign any bill before it has been referred to a referendum, and the two referendums that are enshrined in section 328. The first referendum to remove the term limits, the second referendum to make the removal benefit the incumbent. In our opinion and views, the fight will be around the issue of a referendum. We demand referendums for the following reasons. First, it's because they are mandatory and prescribed in the Constitution. Second, because the 2013 Constitution that they seek to lacerate and amend was born out of a referendum, was born out of a people-driven process, and no political party ever campaigned in 2023 on the basis or mandate of seeking to amend the Constitution. The Constitution, this Constitution we are talking about, gives power to the citizen, gives power to the people, and surely the people must have a say on whether they want that Constitution to be amended, particularly in the vicious manner in which they are seeking, a manner in respect of which they are actually creating a brand new Constitution. Thirdly, we demand an equal, a leveling up of the playing field. ZANU-PF has been campaigning, has been closing churches, he has access to public broadcasters, his jingles on public broadcasters, his billboards. We are not permitted to have even private meetings in our own homes to discuss the Constitution. It's so clear that ZANU-PF has declared a de facto state of emergency against anyone opposed to this bill. And if you look at the systematic organization of the repression and the systematic organization of these choreographed meetings, you can see the role of an organized force, whether the CIO, the intelligence, or some part of the military. You can see components and the remnants of Gukurahundi. You can see components and remnants of the violence of 2008. So this task is not ZANU-PF, it's beyond ZANU-PF. It's being conducted with security sector precision. So we require the demilitarization, the desecuritization of this process. For Christ's sake, it is a civilian exercise, the highest form of civilian engagement, the process of making the constitution. And I have no doubt that if Zimbabweans are allowed to speak freely, to campaign freely, overwhelmingly 90% of the people in Zimbabwe are against this constitutional bill. 90% of the people are against the removal of the right to choose a president when people fought to go into war on the basis of one man, one vote. 99% of the people are against the changing and alteration of the election cycle from 5 years to 7 years. 90% of the people are against the attempt to remove term limits, and 100% of the people are in favor of the referendums. So that is our position. Of course, there will be litigation, and an immediate litigation which will be filed early next week is an application to declare the current processes by Parliament as being unconstitutional. The basis of the application is that Parliament has failed to fulfill its constitutional obligation of ensuring that the open public meetings is allowed by Section 328, subsection 4, and is allowed by Section 141. So I want to conclude, Jedza, by saying that from what we have seen, what we saw yesterday, it is clear that ZANU's agenda is beyond constitutional amendment. They want to restore the one-party state that they failed to introduce in 1989. It is clear they want to establish a dynasty in Zimbabwe, in respect of which, like in monarchy or dynasty, a king is not chosen by the people. A king is chosen by a small little dare, and parliament is being reduced to that. And choosing a king is not a popularity a contest. It's a question of who has money, who has influences. And we know that the people who are driving this, the owners of this thing, and why Zimbabwe is being put throughout this pain is because of the Gananda, the Kudata Gwireis of this world, the Tungwararas of this world, the thieves of this world, some who are thin, some who are fat. And surely our country can't be sacrificed because of this Gananda. So this is a coup on the people of Zimbabwe. This is the slow coup on the people of Zimbabwe. This is the third coup against the people of Zimbabwe, starting with the coup of 2008, when Morgan Tsvangirai was denied the right to be a president in this country, and when South Africa and others chose stability over democracy, and then the coup of November 2017, and then this current coup. If we lose this fight, Mkoma Jeza, we have no country to talk about, because clause 4.2a of this constitution says, notwithstanding the provision of section 328, the term of office of the president is extended. Therefore, it means that in 2030 or at any other time, they can still say notwithstanding. Notwithstanding allows them to create a legal fiction that black is not black, and that white can be black and black can be white, which is why this is so dangerous, and which is why for some of us, it's so inexplicable that anyone can sit on the fence or anyone can be ambiguous when faced with such threats. All hands have to be on board. This is the biggest fight of our generation, and every generation is its moments, and every moment is its own fight. The fight, the moment of this generation is this constitution, and the fight for this generation is this constitution. We have to protect it. So I will stop. I will stop. I see that you have so many, and Prof Madhuku is now
yes,
here.
yeah, Prof Madhuku is now here. So thank you very much for that, passionate, opening, and you have articulated your position quite well in terms of the events that were happening, things that have happened, what happened yesterday, and then the way forward. So I want to bring in Professor Lovemo Madhuku into the conversation. And I've seen the work that you're doing on the ground, going into the people, I think it just taps into this citizen-driven, response, which I would believe is at the heart of the conversation that we want to be having here. So, can I give you the opportunity, Professor Madhuku, to address us, and then if you can elaborate more on what when you call for this citizen-driven, response, what forms of action are you envisioning that us as citizens should be? How should we be joining you as citizens in this issue that we are facing in this moment?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very
ahead.
much. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to add to what has been very, very well articulated by Tendai Biti there, the convener of CTF. I wanted to say that I would then not repeat the details he has given you of what happened yesterday. It was
yes. I'm not looking. Yeah, I'm not looking
we were
at
witnessing.
Yes.
We're not processes of a nation, of a state. We were really witnessing processes of some group of people, those that have decided they will love power and they will do everything to preserve power. And these are not people who are doing it as part of a state, really doing it for their personal interest, because the behavior and the characteristics could only not be a characteristics of a nation state or a state worth talking about. I wanted just to make that clear. Mainly, you also see the environment that they created. At some point, we were not sure what was happening. I think where I was sitting with Tendai, we were not able to really see what was going on, because all what you observed was just a group of people. Initially, we saw that in the within the place there were media people that could then be and where they were stationed, they took the space for the media to be the space for the ZANU-PF youth, and that the youth that were asked the question that they were receiving instructions from the members of parliament were there. It was obviously clear in that regard. So if I may just go into what we have called this, and if I may simplify that with respect, is all we are saying is that can confidently state that Parliament is not interested in hearing the views of the people, that Parliament is only interested in pushing ahead with the position of the few people in ZANU-PF, because Parliament is very much aware that what it is calling the views of the people, those views that are being expressed, are actually not the views of the people that are expressing them. They are views of that small elite that is appearing in all these things in the name of ZANU-PF or in the name of the people. So they are clear that that is what was happening. So they are not interested in anything. They're interested in playing a role that they have been asked to play. Easily say, okay, you shall call yourself Parliament and you shall do these things in the name of Parliament. That is the way it is happening. So there is a commandment out there, commandment up there, which simply tells Parliament what to do. In other words, the people that are doing these things are doing them because they have to do them in the manner that they are commanded. So it's a complete collapse, which is what we discovered in the first 2 days of the public hearings. We had given them not the benefit of doubt. We never really believed that they would themselves listen. But what we believed was that they would open the framework for us to express ourselves. It was to express our views to a parliamentary forum. We're not going to say anything new there. The things that we're going to say were the things that we've always said, the things that we are identified with, the position we have taken that we are totally opposed to the bill. that we would never want to see that kind of rules that are contemplated there to be part of the laws. But we're not going to say anything new, but we wanted to express that directly to them. We have said it in other platforms. We know they're listening, but we wanted to use the formal framework that we are saying it. This is what they denied. We never thought they would go that far. So clearly, there's no reason for us to be in that process if the process cannot even formalistically allow us to express ourselves for the purposes of making sure that we use it as a tool to reach out to all these people that that matter to us. So the disengagement is just to get out of that formality. But like Tendai has correctly indicated, it's simply to give us and focus on other issues so that we don't waste time on the parliamentary process. We waste time on mobilizing people, on ensuring that every corner of the country has this message that this is something that would never be allowed. And up to somebody and say, we cannot accept it. This is what to mean. Now, in terms of the strategy, first one, of course, and the most important is mobilization. Now, out to people with what, and by mobilization, it is meant creating a sufficient interest to buy in the people. We want to explain what this bill means. We want to explain the dangers that lie within this bill. We want to explain what this bill is all about personal interests, those that want to personalize the country. We want to explain that for the progress of our nation, we must never allow what is being proposed. We will rather preserve what is there in our constitution. In other words, demonstrate the wisdom of the current provisions which limit the term of office of a president to 2 5-year terms. Demonstrate wisdom of Section 328, Section 7, which says that should you want to amend the term limit provisions, then the incumbent cannot benefit. The purpose of that provision was simply to kill any amendment to term limits because it assumes that amendments can only be proposed by incumbents. There's no ordinary person who would want to remove term limits because we've never seen a president to give us the reason to want to remove term limits. So clearly, it comes from incumbents. So the purpose of Section 328 is just to ensure that there's no amendment to a term limit. That is the real reason for that provision. So we want to do these things. So mobilization is all about reaching out to people, getting as many of them as possible to feel that they are ready to defend the Constitution. They are ready to put what ZANU-PF wants to do. That is what I mean by mobilization. Then, in the process of mobilization, you also want to make people suggest ways of action. They would be out from that. I think protests would certainly be a way out, which we want to encourage people to think about, because you cannot just defend the people by expressing yourself only by words. I think you might need to express yourself by other more dramatic words, which may send the message better to the body, which is either we have to consider peaceful demonstrations in the civic education, street protests, coming together in all forms so that a change must be similar to ultimately come. Once people defend the Constitution, they are likely to vote out at an appropriate time politicians that go with the constitutional parameters. So it's also part and parcel of this, because eventually the politicians that are doing these things, and they all should be allowed those that are in state power must be made to leave state power. That's what will happen. And the second R would be legal processes, going to the courts and doing our best to ensure that we might convince the courts to rule in our favor in very key positions. One such position would be that the court will, our instance, that Parliament did not do what it was supposed to do. The consultations are not, I don't see how a court can fail to say that if you have one meeting in a distant place, allow one political party in a protest to
Professor, Professor, I'm struggling, to hear you. You're coming in and out, in and out. Is it possible for you to move the position where you are? I think it's a network issue.
All right, I think I will try and do that. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, you're coming through. Yes. If you, okay, I continue. If there's any problem, I'll let you know.
All right. I think let me obviously just quickly make the point that I was saying the second strategy is to focus on legal processes. Legal process and course of state structure.
Right. Yeah. It's a struggle to hear you, Professor. I'm not sure, what is going on, with you. You at one point you can,
Let me
we
try
can
and
hear.
move to a better place.
Please. That would be great. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, thank you very much, for coming through. We are here talking about the way forward after the disengagement that was reported today. You saw a press conference where leaders from CDF, DCP, NCA took a principled stand to disengage from participating in these hearings, and urging people, to do so. So they've come onto the platform to talk to us more about those, and we're going to have an opportunity to engage with them, ask questions, and hopefully get the responses that you'll be looking for. Right, Professor. Let's see if the situation is improved. Can you take the mic now? Professor Madhuku, can you hear me? Right. I think there's an issue with his mic. Mofutidas, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ango Murise.
Right.
No, we're doing good. Thanks for bringing this conversation to the people.
There you are. Yeah, we are going to go into the Q&A session, unless if I get joined by Senator Jameson Timba, who I want to involve in this conversation as well. So, but in the meantime, Honorable Tendai Biti he has gone. He has given us details of some of the events that have happened, and Professor Madhuku was talking to us about some of the strategies. Professor Madhuku, can you hear me now? Let's try this one more time. Right. I think you're struggling. Honorable Tendai Biti.
Hello?
Oh yes. Hello, yes, Professor, go ahead.
Yes, are you hearing me? Is it clearer now?
Yes, Professor, go ahead. Yeah. I think it's much better now.
All right. I had only, when I ended, I had just wanted to emphasize that we have, as Zimbabweans, the court system, which is part of the state system. We must know that courts have a role to play, and we must utilize them. So there must be, like we have already started, litigation left, right, and center. There are so many societies who have come out of serious situations through the intervention by the courts. In this case, we have a clear constitution on what should happen in the event of any attempt to amend term limits. And then instead of all this unnecessary framework, let the courts come in, or we have this unreasonable framework that has been adopted by Parliament, where it calls something public consultation when we can all see that it is not public consultation, right? Instead of fighting and going to war and so forth, let a court pronounce that. Then we only have problems once these people start disobeying court orders. So if things are very straightforward, courts must come in, and then we at least clarify what the problem is. We know that the law does not permit because the courts would have said so. Let us see how they behave. If we are lucky that a court speaks and they have no option but to comply, then we would have solved a lot and we would have preserved the integrity of the nation and would make progress that way. That is the point I wanted to add to what Tendai Biti had said in detail. I would rather then leave it to the questions and so forth. I'll be able to participate in that regard.
Oh, thank you very much, for that. I want to appreciate you. Remember, guys, we are also live on Resistance Radio Station, .org. I'll put, the link in the comment section. If you're struggling, to hear me from this platform, you can always come through via Resistance Radio Station, .org. You can click on the link. It's there in the comment section. So to Mofutaitas and Chieza, we want to do the Q&A session now. So what I would suggest is to bring in people or 3 people at a time, right? You choose we choose 3 people at a time, and then they come in and ask a question, one question, so that we can be in a position to be accommodative of others as well. Is that okay, guys?
That sounds good, Ango. That sounds good.
Yeah, cheers like that. Yes. Right. Cheers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sounds good to me as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. But I want to kick it off. Right. I think let's just kick it off as 3, and then we open it up, to the others. I want to kick it off. This question I want to pose to Honorable Tendai Biti. You've spoken about the things that you want Parliament to do. For instance, to say they should not be allowing the president to append, his signature once, whatever it is that they're doing now, goes all the way. But do you believe? Yeah, okay. Because they failed to run a credible consultative process at this moment. So, do you believe there is that institutional capacity or the political will in this parliament to do these things that you're saying you're going to be asking our parliament, to do? And if they fail to do, then the next processes will be what? I leave it to you, Honorable Tendai Biti.
Yeah, well, I think the Constitution is straightforward in Section 328. If a bill is removing a term limit, or if a bill is extending someone's term, it must be taken into referendum. Therefore, the president cannot sign that bill into law before it has gone through to the referendum. Therefore, it's only right to ask the parliament and to hold them to account to the fact that they must follow the law. After all, if you look at Section 116, part of the function of parliament is to protect and uphold the Constitution. So there's no discretion in the matter. The question is, if they don't do that, what do we do? And I think we've provided the answers, Prof Madhuku and myself. The mass mobilization is allowed by Section 59 of the Constitution, and of course the legal process. The two are not mutually exclusive, or are they mutually destructive?
Right. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mof.
Okay, I think thanks. Thank you, Uncle. Thank you, Honorable Tendai Biti. Thank you, Madhuku. So I think I've got one and a half question. So the first one, I just wanted, maybe I've just been speaking to some people, and people have been asking, just in simple terms, how do we differentiate, this amendment about the ZDF, it says, I think on the 2013, we talk about the Zimbabwe Defense Forces is to protect its people, its national security and interest, and to uphold the constitution. Yet the proposed one, it says in accordance with the constitution. So if you can please just simplify to say, that sounds very subtle, but what exactly does that mean? Because people have been struggling to actually understand the wording. And the half question that I had is, in terms, we know this amendment bill has got various amendments that are being proposed. Is there a chance that, say, the final outcome, they can actually cherry pick some of the elements that are on the bill to be made into law, and some not, or it just comes as a complete? Because obviously there are some elements that people are saying they are okay with, and some elements that people don't want. So is there any chance that they can cherry pick that? So those would be my questions to either of you gentlemen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I think I wasn't hearing anything. You raised two questions.
Yeah, so yeah, okay, let me try to summarize them. So the first one I asked, it was about the amendment about the ZDF. So there's the wording which says, I think the 2013 Inotaura Shokuti to uphold the constitution. Yet the one they are proposing, it says in accordance with the constitution. So for a layman, could you please try and simplify what's the difference? Because the wording sounds subtle, but can you just simplify, what's the difference in that wording? Then my second question was to ask, since this bill has got different amendments, is there a chance that they can cherry pick some of the elements to make it into law, or it's either the whole bill goes through or it doesn't? So can they cherry pick some of the elements that say the people are okay with, and then the other elements are not picked in? So those are my questions.
Okay, those are technical questions. We can easily answer them. The first one, which has to do with upholding, which is in the current constitution, and then the suggestion that it be in accordance with. You will appreciate that in trying to amend, there is clearly the difference. They would not have sought an amendment if the two things would mean the same thing. I think we should agree on that. So those who are amending, they are really making two messages. The first one is that they are putting in a weaker version, because when the Operation Restore Legacy came about in 2017, it used the expression uphold, which was then according to the way it was interpreted, quite open-ended, so that it allowed the army to do anything more or less, as long as it was reasonable. Like in that case, they intervened when they said that they claimed that Mugabe had abdicated his responsibilities. There are people who were usurping the powers of the president. He was allowing his wife and those other people surrounding him, blah, 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 blah. That could easily be justified under uphold. In the same way that now, if the army were to come in and say that Emerson Mnangagwa, what he's doing already, what has happened already, even including what happened yesterday, and even including the suggestion that he wants to preside over such a process where the constitution clearly doesn't allow, he shouldn't benefit. All what is happening now, the army can easily intervene using that. So they want a situation where, according to them, the army would not come in using a constitutional provision. I think that's the element. So they are trying to undermine the role of the army, but at the same time using that amendment to send a message that the army must not think that it can do certain things which are not in line with what the government wants. So to disown the role of the army or the military of 2017 it's a very cynical way of going about things. So I'm sure you answered. It will create a very big difference legally between those two formulations. Then politically, it's also a bad message for these kind of politicians to simply rubbish institutions and sound to be very important by claiming that we want to tell the army where it starts and where it ends. Because that's what that amendment is. It's the most arrogant display of power now. I mean, they've forgotten where they came from themselves. And so they're just rubbishing the army there and nothing more. Then in terms of the other question you asked, whether they can disregard this, or okay, they can then not pass everything, etc. There is now a decision, some judgment of the Constitutional Court that seems to suggest that they are allowed to drop some things there. And then, so it doesn't have to be the whole. They might remove, let's say, something like on the Gender Commission. They can drop it. There's a judgment of the Constitutional Court that suggests that they can do that.
Right. Thank you for that, Professor. Right. Uncle, is it who's on the Constitutional Defense Forum? Is it? Yeah, please, you can go ahead and ask your question if you do.
All right. So I'm on the Constitution Defenders Forum handle. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think I will direct this question to either one of our speakers today. So in terms of what we are now seeing, I know the major sentiment that the majority of ordinary citizens have had is that the crisis in Zimbabwe has been a leadership crisis. I feel it has been more of a fragmentation crisis, and with where we are headed in terms of way forward after disengaging, what are the prospects of seeing a broader alliance moving in unison towards effective mobilization of citizens, re-engaging, vitalizing or incentivizing citizens to be invested in terms of speaking out against these proposed constitutional amendments. So I think that is my question. What are the prospects of a formation in terms of seeing a broader alliance that attempts to push this back in terms of the constitutional amendments? And perhaps as a second question attached to that, as somebody who has monitored some of these public hearings before, but in terms of a different proposed legislation, I remember it was the Private Voluntary Organizations Bill, which is now in act, which was passed, in April. One of the things that I realized is that, there's sort of like a winner takes all mentality on the part of those who propose or who sponsor some of these bills. There is a reluctance to sort of establish middle ground, especially if a bill has got political implications. And my question then would be, looking at the amendments as we see them now, as they are proposed now, Prof Madhuku has already spoken to say there are some things that can be struck off. What's the definitive position? Are we saying do away with the amendments entirely, just withdraw this bill? And maybe the second part, I will put it across to Prof Madhuku to say what advocacy steps can be taken through the different stages that a bill must take in order to finally become an act, to say withdraw the bill entirely in its entirety. Or is it possible to then get to a point where, because we want to be clear as to what the rallying call is, withdrawal of the bill in its entirety or you know what, let's actually take our chances, go to a referendum and see what the people will say, and hopefully, you know, mobilize people towards a no vote as occurred regarding, you know, the majority votes that ended up leading to us having our 2013 constitution. So just to summarize that, first one is the prospect of a broader alliance being formed. Secondly, can we get to a point where advocacy is really more about withdrawal of the bill? Is there any chance during the stages as it is proceeding at which this bill can be completely withdrawn without even having to go to a referendum?
I can start, then I can add on the two questions. Let me start with the second one, which you are saying the only issue we are involved in at the moment is a complete withdrawal of that bill. Complete withdrawal, complete rejection. In this phase of what we are doing, we have no room for debating certain provisions. There's nothing in that bill, completely nothing, and so on. So we are not even entertaining any debate to say there's no reason at this juncture to be amending the constitution, because we all know that the very purpose of this constitutional amendment is to extend the term of office of the president. That's the whole purpose. The whole purpose is to have Mnangagwa go up to 2030 or 2035. It's a total abuse of power. That's what they are doing. Then they've added all the things that you see in that bill are things that are supposed to accompany that unacceptable notion or that unacceptable approach. You see, so I wouldn't have a situation where people start saying, well, perhaps the councillors deserve to be, or well, perhaps we might need to, it's time to rethink about voter registration. That was not, all those things are not intended. It's just an abuse of power. You want Mnangagwa to stay in office, you want to extend his term contrary to the constitution, then you pretend that you are also amending the constitution so that it looks like, so we are not buying that. So this is a total rejection of this. Now, your question there is whether we succeed in having them withdraw the bill completely before it has even reached the stage of a referendum, or it is rejected at the referendum, or and so on. I can tell you that there are various stages. All we want is that bill must go out. So the first stage is where the bill is withdrawn before it is even debated in Parliament. That's where we are at the moment. Ordinarily, it could be done by listening to the people properly. If you were to judge the mood in the country at the moment, any sensible government would not proceed with this bill, regardless of those stage-managed so-called consultations. So you can have a bill withdrawn. The procedure is that it can simply be outside by a government considering the views. If you say we don't want the bill and there's sufficient sense, you can have the bill withdrawn. You can also have it withdrawn before consideration by the court challenges that are all being contemplated. So all the actions so far, the two, and then the third one that Tendai has referred to, which I'm sure is being worked on to say that the consultations have not been properly done. All those actions can actually lead to the withdrawal of the bill before it is considered. So that's one stage. So it can be withdrawn, etc. Then the second stage, which is which people are not having in mind, but which can happen, is that the bill can be rejected by Parliament itself. That they might not get the two-thirds majority, etc., which we think is unrealistic. We don't think that could happen, given that the bill is about them benefiting. So, but that is a theoretical possibility. Then the next one is, of course, the bill being thrown out by a court if they ignore the referendum stage and then simply sign it into law. One can go to court and the court can say that's unlawful. It can end there. Just strike it off and say it's unlawful and end there. Or the court saying, look, this bill cannot be law without a referendum, depending on the stage of intervention. Then the court's ordering a referendum. Then the bill is rejected by a referendum. I hope I have answered that second question, but I don't want to be ever misunderstood. We don't want any debate about any individual clauses of that bill. It must just be rejected. And that is the current formulation. And that's also my understanding of all my colleagues. that we are saying no, it's not the time to deal with that. Then your second, the first question you posed, I think at the press conference, Tendai did indicate that we are looking into, in fact, we have started because you have put here CDF, DCP, and NCA. We issued, we addressed a joint press conference where we're withdrawing from the what we call disengagement. That is the beginning of a broader alliance. And then we are all looking at ensuring that everyone comes under one, not to become one organization, but to work within the same platforms, coordinating our activities, doing actions together. And in this case, it will be strange for us not to do things together because we are all against the bill. So there's just one item on the table, that bill, and we don't want it. Then we might differ the strategies here, but I don't think that can ever separate us. So everyone will be able to work together. The issue of then what comes out of that process at the end of the day, once people work together in a particular dimension, they will then see that they can work together. Then they continue to work together even after the bill has been defeated in a broader political framework, depending on what's going on. So there will certainly be a broader alliance from what I have gathered, speaking with many other people. I want to abuse the platform and say that this issue of saying that there's a leadership problem, I think is not fair. There's no leadership problem currently. All the people that are leading the various organizations, they are very good leaders. And any one of them can lead the struggle that we have. And any one of them can lead us into a new government. It's what people would prefer. I mean, so if, for example, you are given leaders and you don't want to elect them or you don't want to support them, I mean, going by what I have been seeing on social media, that is not a leadership problem. It is a preference of the voters. And that can't be called a leadership problem. There are enough people we have who can lead. It's all now to ensure that perhaps with the leaders give sufficient confidence to the people that they can. But now we have something on the table. And the leaders must be determined from what is happening, how they are leading, what the public wants. If the public wants to defeat this bill, then they should judge their leaders from that project which we are all having as a group. It's different from just wanting to dream of leaders when there's nothing that is on the table. That would be my contribution.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Madhuku, for that. Okay, so we'll go to the speakers. I've added 3 speakers. So, guys, if you can just pose a question, just a single question each, then they can respond. So, I'll start with Mercy, then I'll go to Dr. Moses, then I'll end up with him, Daraji. So, Mercy, if you want to pose your question.
Hey, Titus. Amurukuti kwadza pano. You know, when we just pose questions and there's no context, there's nothing, we lose that opportunity to engage the leaders because it's not something we have all the time. But I will observe. My question is, I'm confused actually why we are even talking about a referendum when the bill itself clearly attempts to avoid that, therefore making the bill unconstitutional and improper. On this aspect, the referendums that you're talking about are now these 2 referendums. The first referendum, which is to extend the length, the time, the width, the breadth, or whatever. And the other is for who benefits from it, the incumbents benefit. Now, the Constitution is very clear on these 2 aspects of the term and beneficiation. It says no bill can have those 2 aspects in the same bill. So the bill is, if you are now asking for 2 referendums, you are doing a forgiveness on the improper unconstitutional act that ZANU-PF did. And you're saying, let's ignore the technicality, but let's proceed to the 2 referendums That should have never happened. And now you are allowing ZANU-PF to do an on-call, which is you're doing presumptive work. You want 2 referendums of what? The Constitution tried to protect the citizens and said you must never be asked these 2 questions at the same time. We must deal with the first question first. Do you want to extend the term? And we must be asked that properly. As this is a Kumani so it's not one where the bill doesn't do it and then we end up begging for it as if it's a hostage situation. We must be asked for a referendum, or we should ask for a referendum. A decision must be made whether we want one. It should not be assumed that we want a referendum and go beg for one because ZANU-PF yatitangira to ask a question. Then when you're saying we want 2 referendums, which one do you want first from ZANU-PF? In this presumptive that we have already gone through the first one, it has okayed the extension. And we are now moving on to seeing who should benefit. The Constitution is very clear. Deal with one. Deal with that process. Go to the referendum. Come back with the results. If the results are positive, we can consider to ask the second question. But to now force citizens to have these 2 back-to-back things, I believe we are also now becoming not defenders of the Constitution. We are bundling, we are allowing a bill that came to the citizens improperly and unconstitutionally, forcing them to have 2 questions that they should never have been forced to. Bundling these 2 aspects that the Constitution forbade to exist on the same bill. So can you answer to me why we are the ones begging for 2 referendums instead of returning the bill as improper and unconstitutional and leaving the citizens of Zimbabwe alone and not bothering them with unconstitutional things? Because ZANU, if it had been you who had written that bill, would not forgive this technicality, would not allow you to bundle these 2 issues and on your behalf request 2 referendums presumptively, like one has been done and you have results. So why are we doing that is my question. Why are we conscientizing citizens to now start preparing for referendums that ordinarily the manner in which they must go through the process to get
Right,
there?
Mercy. We don't have time. I think you've made the point.
I'm trying to, because everyone I've asked tries to avoid this question.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I will give them the opportunity to speak. I think they've gotten the question. Can we go on to the next one, please? If you can get one question, please, one question at a time, so that we accommodate as many people as possible. So, Dr. Moses, please come through.
Thank you, Uncle Jed. Thank you, the speakers. I just want to maybe first acknowledge the role that you are playing to defend the Constitution. Maybe my question kind of follow up to the question that has been asked by the CDF representative, because it is based on what I think needs to be done for us to be able to successfully fight against the 2030, the question of unity within the opposition. We have spent countless hours on these spaces. Some of us saying that we need to unite, we need to build bridges. As long as someone is saying, let's defend the Constitution, we need to join that particular person. But we have seen a very fragmented terrain where there are some among us who think that, this person or this organization or this one does not have the moral high ground to defend the Constitution because you have done this before, you have done that, you do not have the credibility. And we have tried as much as we can to say, let us set all this aside and fight together to defend this. So, and I'm going to be very truthful, and maybe uncomfortable.
Guys, can we get to the questions part, guys? Can we get to the questions part? I understand, the urge to want to contextualize, but unfortunately, we are running against
Okay,
time.
okay,
Please.
thank you. So my question is, because I don't kind of see this unity without leadership telling us to say, let us set this aside. So that unit, I don't see it. And maybe, are you also working with some elements within ZANU-PF that are opposed to the agenda, even though, we know they are opposed for sake of the interests that have nothing to do with the people? Thanks.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Mdaraji, do you want to quickly give your question, please?
Thank you very much, Ango Jeda. My first question is, Professor and Tendai, how illegal is this bill, and what do we do with the illegal bill? And if the courts in Zimbabwe fail us, what is our recourse? Those are the two questions I want to ask. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Can I don't know, between the, the two of you who wants to go first? I mean, which question, do you want to tackle? I see it, Honorable Biti, your mic is on, please.
Yes, thank you. I want to answer Marcy, and I will speak a little bit on the question of unity, and then defer to Prof Madhuku. So I think it's a communication issue we need to resolve. It's a messaging issue we need to resolve. The starting point is that we are totally against this bill. We totally reject this bill. So it's not as if we are saying, give us a referendum now. No, we are saying this bill is an unconstitutional constitutional amendment. It's an attempt to rewrite the 2013 constitution. And to be legalistic, it's a bill that is affecting the basic structures, the basic foundations of the 2013 constitution. And modern law now says that if you have a bill that affects and defaces the foundations of an original constitution, then it itself becomes an unconstitutional amendment. And courts in Kenya, in India, in Pakistan, in Nigeria, have accepted this doctrine of basic structure. So that's the starting point. And the litigation that has been filed so far, for instance, the litigation brought by war veterans and done by Professor Madhuku, is basically saying to Mr. Mnangagwa, you are the president. In terms of Part 5 of the Constitution, you are obliged to defend and protect the Constitution. By allowing this amendment, you have breached your obligation to uphold and defend the Constitution. The issue of the referendum only comes into it because the bill itself excludes the referendums. The bill itself in clause 4.2a says, notwithstanding the existence of section 328 and the obligation to hold those two separate referendums, we will extend the term of office of the president and parliament to 2030. And you have heard dubious arguments around why adding 2 more years is not extending a term, strange arguments. And we are saying that under no circumstances can you add 24 hours to the term of office of defined offices in that constitution, including the president, including the clerk of parliament, including defense force commanders. Under no circumstances can you do that without going to first a referendum that removes the term extension, to a second referendum in terms of 328.7 that makes you a benefit. So it's not us demanding the referendum. It is the Constitution demanding the referendum, and demanding referendums is a way and means of protecting itself. The Constitution is protecting itself against amendments. And remember, this Constitution was made in 2013 in the context of seeking to address certain mischiefs which we had witnessed in the preceding 20 years. And one of the mischiefs was that our constitution had been amended over 20 times in under 14 years during the Mugabe era. So the constitution, one of the things it was dealing with was this mischief of constant amendments. So the sequencing and the messaging is very clear. This bill must be withdrawn. We don't want this bill. And one of the reasons why we don't want this bill is that it is seeking to amend something that we all agreed to in a referendum on 21 March 2013, when 93% of us, representing 3 million, voted. That is the starting point. But the second argument is that, but if you want to extend the term of office, you can't avoid the two referendums that are spelled out in section 328. As far as the question of unity is concerned, I think that I think that this, outside Gukurahundi, this is the biggest existential threat that our country faces. I've made reference to section 42, clause 42A of this bill, which says notwithstanding. The word notwithstanding is similar to the word deem in law. It seeks to create a fiction, a factual and legal fiction. So we can deem a man to be a woman. The law allows that. So what notwithstanding is doing is to create a fiction that section 328 does not exist. Now, if we allow that, there's nothing that stops them in 2030 to say, notwithstanding the provisions of the Constitution, the next election is in 2060. There's nothing that will stop them to say in 2030, notwithstanding the provision of this particular provision, there won't be an election. So we face a serious fight in that they are suspending the entirety of the Constitution. They are suspending any capacity and capability of the citizen to hold the state to account and to hold power to account. In that context, it is a fight that all of us must be on board, and all hands on board, and which is why we had our meeting today and made the announcements that we made today in the morning, in announcing that we'll be working towards this broad alliance to defend the Constitution. I will defer to Prof Madhuku.
Okay, thank you very much, Tendai. I think he has dealt with that critical question, which related to that. I think the first questioner who was going on and on why we are even allowing or talking about a referendum and so on. Just to add that, like what Tendai said, when we say a referendum, it's a shorthand for saying we don't want this thing. So we are with the speaker who says this is illegal. It must never be there in the first place. But when you say something is illegal and must never be there in the first place, you actually have only two ways of doing it. One is to go to court and ask a court to simply say this is illegal. The second one is to get the people saying no. And the best way for Zimbabweans to say no is to say, let's go to a referendum. Because we know that a referendum would. Remember that in this country, we still haven't reached a stage where outside the legalistic processes like going to court or going into a ballot and voting, we have not as yet reached a stage where we want to reach that stage with time, reach a stage where by mass action itself on its own, we can put an end. We have done that in the past, 1997, we would stop a few initiatives here and there. But so when we say referendum, we are simply telling ZANU-PF that let's go to the people. And the ZANU-PF people are understanding it. That's why they say they don't want a referendum, because they also know that the people will reject. So it's a shorthand for rejecting it. Then I think the other point was all about leadership and unity of purpose. I'm sure that has been answered before. That it's all up to processes that can lead to people working together. We are in various organizations, but I think when an issue arises where we are all speaking with one or we target it, we come together. And this is what we should try and do for now in defeating this bill. How it is going to be done, that is not going to be our problem. We any format will do. I think that's what we agreed as the three organizations and the others that are coming in. There's someone who was saying that I don't know, I think he was stopped by the moderator who wanted perhaps to criticize us or criticize the current leaders and say perhaps we're not sure about your motives, things like that. I'm sure that's what was intended. I would suggest that Zimbabweans have a very good opportunity to look at the leaders that are currently involved and to look at all of us. I mean, we can never be pretending if we are saying no to the bill and not just saying no to the bill. We are doing everything in our power to show that we no to the bill. ZANU-PF understands that we are serious about that. I'm not sure whether there's anything more that is required than us standing up and hoping that we get everyone on board to stop this madness. We will do more, but that's all that there is. You can look back at history, yes, so that you are late, but I think you should now concentrate on what's going on and see what will come out of it. That's all I can add. I didn't get any other specific question, unless the moderator can remind.
I think the last question that was asked pertaining to what happens if Parliament does not do what is supposed to be done. I think that is a question that has been answered earlier when you guys were talking about the different strategies that exist, like also going to the courts, etc. to try and stop or to try and get them to perform in a certain way. So I think that was the other question. So yeah,
Well,
we
perhaps
can.
I can. Yes, I
Yeah.
can add that. I think some people also want the bigger picture. What if we fail in all this? And then ZANU-PF actually now has an act which says Mnangagwa is going all the way to 2030 and that the parliamentarians will remain there. In other words, what if everything fails? That has to be answered. If everything of that nature fails, then Mnangagwa would be an illegitimate president. In other words, when his term ends in about August or September 2028, and then he assumes continued leadership on the basis of this bill, let's say it would have become law. That's what I'm trying to address. And that if I'm not answering properly, I would want to get feedback on that. If we fail and then we actually have a parliament which is in existence not because of an election, but is in existence because of an act that they passed themselves, which they passed as MPs to benefit themselves, which was signed into law by Mnangagwa to benefit himself. In other words, this country will be run by people who have just arrogated to themselves the power to govern. In other words, those would have taken a coup. As from September 2028, there will be no legitimate government. And if there's no legitimate government, then we will resist that government in every way. In other words, the next struggle from 2028 onwards until that government capitulates would be a more serious action. As to say, we don't recognize this government. We don't recognize the amendment. We don't recognize amendment number 3, even if it is then passed into law outside the referendum, and so on. So that's what we are saying, because with the referendum, it will never be passed. I hope I have answered that. What if everything else fails, then we enter into full-blown politics, which is to resist a government we consider they will be as illegitimate as Ian Smith, or as illegitimate as the apartheid government, or as illegitimate as any coup governments that have come into place, and they would be resisted by those who are able. And I think the public will then. So they will have to be arresting people, filling jails, and so on, things like that. That is my additional answer.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. Before the other speakers, come through, can I ask guys if we can repost, this space, repost this space. Right now, we are over 850 gadgets that are registered, and there's only about 26, reposts. Please just a report so that, we get in as many people to come through and hear some of these questions and the responses that are being given. Right. Over to you, Ngi, Mofu, is it, or Chieza, who have added people? You can introduce them and then they can ask, their one question. Can we insist, guys, on one question because we don't have time?
Okay, so I think the next coming in, we've got Atenda, Freelance, and OnGap. So if we can go in that order, please.
Okay, good evening. Uncle Gerard, Moftitus, Prof Madhuku, and Advocate Tendai Biti, and everyone who is on the platform. I will shoot straight to my question. We know from the previous parliamentary procedure like this, it covered 1,958 words. And currently, the process is covering 50 to 70 venues. Why, when the publication was made that the public participation will be done in this number of words, as our representatives who are also legal gurus, why didn't you do an urgent interdict to stop the whole process? Because you can see that the whole process is violating a lot of rights enshrined in our Bill of Rights, including a proper, peaceful environment for public participation. I can name a number of rights. I don't want to name them, but on your end that this process should have been interdicted without even allowing this process of people being harassed. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Freelance.
Thank you so much, Titus. Baruma Babano Rema Makestedo. Right, sincerely, one question. My expert Baruma, my lawyers, Makweta. So I want to ask them this question. Can you point exactly to a young Zimbabwean who doesn't understand this thing, who probably born outside Zimbabwe but still a Zimbabwean? Can you explain to him or to her the exact clause in the Constitution Amendment 3 that concerns you most, especially you guys as lawyers, and the worst scenario if this bill passes? Thank you. I could have asked more and more, but no, I'll take this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Freelance, for that. And OnGap.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think Prof Madhuku touched briefly where I want to ask. My question is political. So there are three main ways where us as the general public can participate in political activities. Such consultations that we are being blocked from, going into the voting booth and casting our ballots, and also protesting and doing what you call demonstrations. Why is it that we are focusing mainly on the legal side and we are not hearing anything about protests? People are gathering in their numbers, an opportunity for people to just have their placards, show their resistance because they don't get the mic. Why are we not getting any of that? Is there any reason behind that? I hope that makes sense. I try to make it as short as possible.
Right, thank you, OnGap, for that. So over to you, Professor Madhuku or Tendai Biti.
I can start this time. There was a question that was posed by, I think, the first one, who says, why do we not do an interdict immediately that they had published only 50 or so places? We knew that they ought to have been doing it in every ward and so forth. I must be fair to the question and say that was considered as one of the possibilities. But I think the questioner would agree with me that we have a stronger chance now when Parliament has made it meaningless to have consultations. In other words, going to a court, you'll be inviting another arm of state. We should all know on this platform that there is an animal called the separation of powers. Separation of powers entails that an arm of state such as the judiciary must be slow to say in respect of another arm that another arm is unreasonable or irrational. That is the law as it stands, and that is the law around the world. So it would have been more difficult to convince a court on an agent basis that stop Parliament from doing what it wants to do. A court, right? When you start, you already be on the losing side because the court says, remember, this is Parliament that has the responsibility to decide that. Perhaps in its wisdom, 50 places will do. Perhaps, things like that. I just want to indicate what it was, because it was raised. There are people who wanted to go to court. But the advice they got from many seasoned lawyers who practice in the Constitutional Court, because the court that could have made, if you had gone to a court like a high court in this country, the high court would just be a single judge and so forth. And many of them are not, would not be as courageous as possible to stop a process that has not yet started. But they will be very courageous in this current setting to then assess what has happened. Look, remember all what you have seen, the unreasonable busing of people, the irrational, gross irrationality of saying any opposite view must not be aired. Where it is aired, you pick up those people for beating or for arresting or whatever they are doing with all what has been happening. The chaos of having one center in a district, I think it would be easier. That's what I can say to the questioner, that it's a matter of legal strategy. Whenever people want the law, then they must also take into account certain realities about legal processes. We didn't want in this case to go to court merely for the sake of going to court. In this case, because of the importance of the matter, we want to go to court, and we will be in the courts in matters where our chances of winning are very high. So now anyone who is going to the court, in the Constitutional Court, because it already has precedence in this regard, our chances are just more than 70% for the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe to say that what has taken place and what Parliament calls public consultation are not consultations within the contemplation of the Constitution. Yet the same court would have found it difficult to stop. But it could still have happened, perhaps. But I am just saying, if a person had come to me and it had gone to Tendai as well, given his experience in the court, it's most likely that lawyers of that level would have cautioned going up to the court immediately. And you want the court to have tangible evidence. Now the court will be told that the opposition leaders in Bay 8 at the Harare City Sports Center, where if you get those videos and so on, I mean, that's obvious. That's how I can say that. Then there was also a question, the third one, the second one, I didn't get it, Pastor Nell answered. Then the third one, which was saying, why are we only hearing of legal things and we are not getting to hear the politics? It's a very good question. And I agree with the sentiment. We have not yet done enough of the political thing, but you can have two examples of the political things and you know the consequences. I'll start with the second one. Tendai and the CDF went around just about 2 weeks now, less than 2 weeks ago, to get to the people, distributing flyers, having private meetings. They went to Mutare and so forth. And then they couldn't continue beyond a day. They were arrested, kept in custody for over 2 days. Got out of it. They were asked to pay bail money. What for? You can ask yourself. Then I'm sure Tendai was asked to surrender his passport. What for? So he can't leave the country now except getting permission. What for? Merely for going to engage with the people. He's now, so that's a political thing. Then the other example relates to me and members of the NCA. On 1 March, we organized a meeting at our head office to actually plan how to mobilize and get to the people. And sorry, I think I got interrupted.
No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yes, and start campaigning. You know that. And it's now history. You all know what happened to me, what happened to the 16 other members, and so on. I think I'm fully recovered. Perhaps that's what I can say. I'm not sure whether that would be correct. But those are the political processes are slower. That is my answer to the question. They are slower. They need a lot of work together, a lot of cooperation together, and so on. Then I've given you those two examples because I wanted to add another thing in relation. I was able to watch, I would say watch because I was just following the manner in which Tendai was criticized in some circles. I'm sure it will be discouraging. I think he was called in some circles all sorts of names and so forth. This is positioning himself, blah, 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 blah. I mean, let's be clear. This is things that happened because they were on social media. In my case, I was lucky because the attacks on me didn't last for hours. Initially, the first persons thought that I was acting. And so on. There was raised the issue of the Madhuku strategy coming out. I'm not sure who was doing that. But then it quickly fizzled out when people realized that it was for real, that I had been injured. But look at the instinctive reaction to people that are doing something that is quite clear and on the ground. That's politics. So we will do these things. The political organization, I want to assure the question, but it is true that we have been slow there. To start protests now, those should be organized. But this would require a lot. Now we've mobilized, now people are a lot of buy-in, and then we must prepare for the consequences, because the consequences would mean, I think in a very short space of time, that those people will be arrested, kept in custody for long, and you have to produce leaders coming in to fill the places of those that are being jailed, then just to continue like that. That will be my responses. That is true. People are focusing on the legal because they think it's safer. But the reality is that we might need to do much more of the politics than anything else. I have not been able, moderator, to deal with the second question. Perhaps Tendai got it, and then he can add on the other question.
Okay. Honorable Tendai Biti, do you want to take? I think the question was the second question. Do you remember it?
Yes. He asked about what, in our view, is the worst provision
Correct.
in this bill. I think that poison is poison. There's no better poison. So every provision in that bill must be rejected. We've been speaking about election cycles. We've been speaking about term limits. We've been speaking about the disenfranchisement of every Zimbabwean and the delegation of that right to choose going to parliament. But what about the provision that says traditional leaders are now political, are now subjective, particularly in the context of Zimbabwe? The attempt to make them a political commissar. Can you imagine how long lasting that that will be? I've been traveling around the country talking to people, and I remember I was in a certain village, so I spoke about term limits and why Mnangagwa can't go beyond 2028. But I can tell you that the citizens in that village were most shocked by something that they didn't know, and they said, "Oh, look, we blame Studio 7. Studio 7 is no longer there." The provision that shocked them most was the fact that they will no longer be choosing their own president. They looked incomprehensible. They just couldn't fathom it. So every provision in that bill is just heinous. I mean, think of the provision to remove the gender commission. Why? For Christ's sake. Think of the provision to bring back voter registration to the Registrar General and the fight we fought to remove Tobayo Obdede. Think of the fight we took to have the ZEC do that in that constitution is heinous. I want to add on the first question that an agent application wasn't going to succeed, because I think the question was, why didn't you file an agent application? And Prof Madhuku has explained the reasons. The application that is coming and the notice has been given, and now that we have seen what happened on the 30th and 31st, there's now more evidence. The application that will be filed, in respect of which notice had been given, was that the scope of the consultations was limited. The 68 meetings, 2 meetings in Harare, 2 meetings in Bulawayo was limited. So that application is coming, which is why I said at the beginning, the demand we are making is that, number one, 16 May should not be treated as the cutoff or the deadline. The 90 days pronounced in Section 328 is only a minimum period of consultation. 2, there must be a minimum of 5 days meetings in different parts of a district, and there must be, as we tried to do in 2013, we had meetings in over 1,900 wards. 3, the process must be more people-driven. The process must be more data centers with rapporteurs collecting data. That's the demand which we are making. There will be a lot of court applications. There will be a lot of litigation, but we've tried to go to the people so that this is not reduced to a battle of lawyers. But you have seen the heavy-handed manner in which the state has reacted to us. The assaults on Professor Madhuku, the assaults on people like Confidence Chipangura, the vicious assault on Gilbert Mtabuka. And don't forget the bombings last year on the 28th of October, the bombing at Sapes Trust, the bombing at Gilbert Mbwende's house, the kidnappings, the abductions. I want to refer to the case of Braid Gore, a young man who is a member of CDF. They took him, dumped him somewhere. We took him to a hospital. They went and collected him, beat him up, and literally left him for dead. The young man is traumatized right now. Prof Madhuku spoke about what happened to me in Mutare. I think the worst part of my case was that we're actually in a private meeting. We're actually in a private residence. We're actually in a small private room discussing about the constitution. And yet we slept 3 days in prison. They injected things in our system, and a court order was issued to the effect that we are not allowed to convene or address any public gathering. The definition of public gathering is not given in that court order. Before I went into prison, I could speak at weddings and funerals. Now I can't do that without permission. I've lost my passport, and I have to report twice, Monday and Friday, at Highlands police station, which is totally, upset. In our press conference in the morning, we spoke of the importance of Section 59, the importance of mass action, the importance of petitions and demonstrations. Something that Munyaradzi Bisai Munya emphasized a lot. I can't speak a lot about that, but it's something that is inevitable. It's something that is provided for in the Constitution, and the best way of protecting this Constitution is certainly by making sure that the citizen owns this. And as I said before, the legal strategy and the people strategy are not mutually exclusive, nor are they mutually destructive. So it's going to be a long fight, and a fight that I suspect will be with us for many years until this bill is withdrawn. in whatever manner possible.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. Can we quickly go on to the next three? We've got Marco, Becky, and Chris. I will start with you, Marco, if you can ask your question.
All right. Yeah, my question is a kind of a background of having Tendai as being my lawyer at some point, fighting for constitutionalism around Section 210 of the Constitution on Independent Complaints Commission, after we were captured by the security forces, and also having Professor Madhuku, having been my lawyer, bail lawyer, when I spent around a year in prison. I'm speaking to them because these are people whom I've seen upholding the law and advising me privately to say, no, yes, we understand you might have your frustrations, but there is a constitution, it's a living document, and indeed it's living. That's why even ZANU-PF now is trying to go all these lengths, dishing hundreds of millions of US dollars through oligarchs to try to buy the population. We saw the people who are being passed and everything. It shows that the constitution is there, and they can't just have their way. If it wasn't there, they could just have it their way. And these people I'm mentioning, Tendai, Prof Madhuku, even Doug Cottard, he has assisted me lots of times. He's also a legal practitioner. There's Madhuk Chivasa. I'm mentioning these people because I've seen Tendai getting attacked, persecuted, arrested, the bombing at Sapis Trust, Prof Madhuku tortured in ways which I can't imagine someone has advised me to say, there's the law, there's always recourse. You need, even when protesting, you need to confine yourself within the bounds of the law. And there is always recourse, there's always remedy within the law. And even now, we can hear they are saying that even Doug Cottard, even Madhuk Chivasa, I saw how he was echoed and was not protected when he made his submissions. I think it was in Masvingo province, somewhere there.
Right. If you can get your question.
My question now is, we have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. They are here in Harare today. The last day is tomorrow. And all this is happening, what you've seen across the country. And I've seen your press conference earlier on. Is it not strategic to, number one, come up with a quick engagement with them since they are in the country? Because these are things that they need to realize. Then number two, also, what help is the international community? What help can you get from the international community? One, with the SPHR in mind, who are already in Harare, and two, with SADC, we have AU, and also other international bodies. What maybe advice can you give to the people to say, no, for us to really get our fight on the right side, we need to take these steps? Of course, for myself, I'll be asking in relation to things like people in the diaspora, what kind of steps do we need to take? There are embassies all across, countries where over around 6 million Zimbabweans are in. What advice do you give to them, and what contributions do you think they can make towards putting pressure on ZANU-PF at an international scale? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Can I go on to Becky? Becky, do you want to come through?
Thank you so much, and everyone else. So my question, frame it like this: to our Honorable Tendai Biti and our Prof Madhuku, you have been on the trenches since around 2000 against this monster ZANU-PF. You have seen how brutal it is, and I remember in 2007, Professor, you were also attacked. So my question is, were you not aware that ZANU-PF was going to come up with this script? They've been doing it for a long time, and that's actually how they operate. They were going to pass people. They were going to be violent. They did it even during the same meetings during the 2013 constitution. So my question is, what plans are you having in future in terms of, one, attending such meetings, knowing very well that ZANU-PF is going to do that, because they are not apologetic. They will not give us freedom. And number three, what is in place to protect the people? Already, as you speak, those individuals who spoke, they're already probably under attack, or they are being hunted right now. They are not safe. You, as a political party, how are you planning on protecting those individuals? Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Once again, I reiterate one question, please. Chris, do you want to come through?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, leaders, even the host for this sport. I just wanted to ask the leaders as well, and also make a contribution in the following manner.
No. Ask a question. Ask a question. We don't want contributions for now. We just want to ask questions, please.
Yes.
We don't have time.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, my question is, I have seen like on the videos which have been circulated of people being bashed, which my question to the leadership, I saw Honorable Biti going to do some engagement, and also Professor Madhuku also doing some engagement to inform the citizen. Isn't it prudent as well for the rest of the country as well to raise awareness of the gravity of the matter, which ZANU-PF is trying to undertake? Because I'm seeing even proponents of the monster trying to support it. They actually not even aware of the implications of the dangers which is lying ahead once this monster is passed through. Isn't it prudent for us, everyone, just to raise as much awareness as we can to the rest of the Zimbabwean? Because ZANU-PF is using an ammunition of having a population of people who are uninformed, who just are being used and for the things which are actually a danger to themselves.
Right. Thank you very much. Over to you, honorables. I don't know who wants to go, who wants to start, Professor or Honorable Tendai?
I think Tendai should start, I think.
Honorable Biti, the mic is yours.
I think we are restating. We'll restate what we said already. Firstly, on reaching out to organizations. Yes, we will write to officially to various organizations, the UN departments, including the Security Council, SADC, and so forth. But we know they know these things. We know the embassies know these things. In fact, yesterday at the City Sports Center, I saw two embassies there. I saw the United Kingdom, and I saw Japan there, and I think there were also one or two. Embassies there. So I think that what is very extremely disappointing is that we now live in a very dangerous new world order that is polarized, that is toxic, but but in respect of which international law has lost its powers of deterrence. We now live in an international order that is now very cynical. A lot of things have been happening in this country. I was shocked that when Prof Madhuku was assaulted, and when things were happening all over, I can talk of the shutdown of my law firm. I can talk of the arrest and the assaults that have taken place, in the country, the kidnappings. People like Job Scala staying in prison for 2 years, Jameson Timba for 6 months. I can't remember a single embassy issuing a statement to condemn. The old days of the Xavier Macheos of this world, the Andrew Pococks of this world are long by. These days we see ambassadors when they are engaged in cooking competitions. And I think that for people in the third world, international law has always remained a form of deterrence against autocracy and authoritarian consolidation. These days, you see governments falling over each other to accommodate a terrible regime that is unleashed violence and fascism against its people. And Exhibit A is what happened in the last 2 days. So we will engage. I also see a football mentality. I support Arsenal Football Club, but I can coach Arsenal FC. I can put a lineup for our next game against Man City. So I also see that happening to, so when you get a question like, well, you should have filed an agent application. It's very, when you are on the ground like we are, you make practical decisions at that time. And one of the difficult things that we are facing at the present moment is that we are actors, we are in the villages, but at the same time, you are sitting on a desk as a lawyer now, putting on that other hat. So, which is why I said let's all come on board. Let's have all hands on deck. Doug Coltart was beaten up yesterday. He's in the middle of drafting a very important constitutional application that is being filed. That will be filed in the Constitutional Court. And I was talking to him today to say, Doug, you can't be a lawyer now because your affidavit is now going to be an important part of the evidence. So part of the challenge of human rights lawyers is that we also tend to be human rights activists. We also tend to wear other hats, and which is why we would like as many people to be on the table. Particularly guys in the diaspora. There are lots of things that you can help the struggle back at home. So I'll stop here. I believe that everyone should play his part. I hope to see so many demonstrations at embassies across the length and breadth of the globe. And the diaspora is born in this fight because one of the key issues is you have now become the second largest contributor of foreign currency after gold. The diaspora remittances are now US $2 billion a year, and yet you have no right to vote, notwithstanding the specific provisions of Section 67 of the Constitution. So you can't be innocent bystanders. You have to be an integral part of the fight against the constitutional mutilation, which also involves non-implementation of the Constitution. The Constitution has not been implemented on the key aspect of devolution, on the key aspect of diaspora rights, just to name a few. I'll stop here for now.
Right, thank you very much. Professor Madhuku, do you want to...
I don't think there's anything else for me to add. He has covered everything.
Right, okay. Our time is now approaching almost 8:30 in the UK, which is 9 in Zimbabwe. Can I kindly ask our guest speakers here if we can take 3 more questions, and then I'll give you your final remarks so that we get to the top of the hour. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, okay. The last 3 questions will do.
Very last.
Okay.
I'm going to Mutare tomorrow for my.
Oh yeah. We need you. Yeah, we need you.
I actually wanted to go tonight.
No. All right. So okay. So can I bring in Ru, Owen, and Babato Nodzai, please? If you can ask your single questions, and then we give them the opportunity to respond, and we'll let them go early. We are pakati pe viki. Because not when I do Easter, see Iowa at South Easter weekend, but yeah, Ru, can you take the mic?
Thanks, Uncle Jared and Titus, and thank you to our guests for all the work that you're doing. Honestly, we cannot appreciate you enough. I really just wanted to ask the question around if you were to charge Zimbabweans, is of course we're closing, if you were to charge Zimbabweans and you were to be prescriptive with them in terms of the action that they should be taking in a time such as this, what would that be? Because I think that we are in a time where it's almost like kids in the playground. If you don't tell them break time is over, they'll continue playing. So if you were to charge Zimbabweans and give them that sort of like prescriptive, even if you were to give 3 each of these are the things that each Zimbabwean should be doing in a time such as this, what would those things be? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Owen, do you want to come in?
Yes, I'll be honest with you. My questions are 2 and they're very straightforward. So my first question is, what percentage of the population of Zimbabwe can decide constitutional amendment that can be considered as this percent if this percent says we are going to follow it? I don't know what, either way, by referendum or by anything. And then the second question is, why can't we go and ask people if they want their constitution to be changed? Like the system, their process is flawed. People are being beaten, are being abused. Why can't we have our own and then go and ask Zimbabweans who are out there and then record our own data so that we can present it for our own personal use or for our use as Zimbabweans? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Baba Tonozai, do you want to come in with your with the final question?
Yeah, Marita uncles host nema co-host enyu nevanoremekedza vose vari paplatform kunyanya vaenzi vedu. Inini ndati kurei ndaane zvinhu zvinji zvandambonzwawo. Ndinonzwa macomments anobudikidza kudzikisira mweya yedu anoti kusvikira madhonga amera nyanga, kuramba tiripo, ndinenge ndiripo kusvikira 2028 kunyange constitution ichireva zvimwe. Tinonzwa mavoice kunyunyuta kune vanhu vatakavimba navo muchakabvugeza iko zinoti hakunzwa VP vari kutsigira constitution. Vana Henry Muchena magamba atakashinochinzwa kare kare vari kunyunyuta nenyaya yeconstitution. Tinonzwa kuti nhengo dzedu dzepariamendi dzinenge dzakutsikinyidzwa nezvikwereti zvavanopiwa. Tingave netarisiro here kuti mukuzovhota kwavo tinodzikinurwa? Mazita henyu.
Aiwa, ndinotenda baba. Thank you very much. Andiyaziva kuti abandotanga nani.
I'll start
Professor.
so that I can then close.
All right, Professor.
All right. When I've done, I'm going to close and mark some.
Yeah,
I think that from the last 3 questions, we will simply be going over and over things that we have. I got the first speaker who said, what is it that would want a Zimbabwean to do with the kind of things we would expect of Zimbabweans and so forth? For me, I would have perhaps 2. I may not be 3, but they can be 3. The most important thing I would say for a Zimbabwean, every citizen, is to form an opinion and take a stand over these things. Whenever there's something that is arisen in the public discourse, the first duty of a citizen is to consider what is happening and take a position. What is your position? You don't have to communicate. First, reach a decision on your own and say, what do I think or what would I want? Where you are unable to form an opinion, try and gather as much information as possible. So the kind of steps will depend on where you stand, but every citizen must have a position. It's a must. There is a proposal to change the constitution in the manner that is being suggested. What do you think as a but we must have, if we were to go to each person at any time, what do you think? They must be able to say, no, I am on this side. Once you have formed an opinion, you can actually compare that with others, then listen to opinions that are coming. You can also postpone forming an opinion and first listen to different sides and then form. But at the end, a Zimbabwean must form or reach a position. And when they've reached that position, it will then determine what they do thereafter. Once you have your position, and you realize that the position you are taking is actually being threatened or undermined by those in authority, you must begin processes that support your position finally succeeding. So in this case, would expect anyone who has formed an opinion to participate in processes. If a process is called upon, let's say it's a vote that has to happen, then if you are a Zimbabwean, then you must make sure that you must be counted, do turn out and vote if it is a referendum or anything. Or if you hear that there is support required for those that are pursuing your position, or etc., do so and support those people. And then people get arrested here or they get injured and they might need assistance. So it will be forming an opinion, helping out as much as possible in support of the cause that you have, and then ultimately make the most important steps that are required should there be a decision required of you in terms of a vote. Then there's also someone who says, how about ourselves going out there and then perhaps conducting our own surveys? That is what is currently being done. What matters is to reach out to as many people as possible and to make them appreciate what's going on. As far as we know at the moment, the majority of the people that we've interacted with don't like these things. They don't want what is being proposed. Of what is to be suggested for them to do, and that is the short answer that I would give. Tendai can then finish up. Otherwise, thank you very much for this occasion.
Thank you very much. I appreciate. Over to you, Honorable Tendai Biti. Honorable Biti. Yeah, Honorable Tendai Biti.
He might have left. I'm not sure whether the last question which I didn't answer was what.
The last question.
Yeah, I'm still here, Blajet.
All right. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I would just say, yeah, the last question was Yababa Tonudzai. I think he was asking whether we can trust the parliament. I think that yes, there are some decent people in parliament. I would mention, for instance, Honorable Gladys Clutchwell. But by far, the majority of them, it would be too much to expect that they will protect the constitution. So in our dealings, in our calculations, we should treat parliament as a captured institution, which means that the task is outside the parliament. The task is to put a price to those MPs for any bad behavior, and the task is to build a process and a campaign that will create a disincentive for any state institution, including parliament, that may want to act against the obvious, overwhelming feeling of the people, which is to reject the constitutional amendment bill number 3 of 2026. The first question, I think, is an important one. It asks what should Zimbabweans do? I think that every Zimbabwean must take a position against this bill, and every Zimbabwean must act. Acting means either being on the front line or even praying or contributing, but it can't be a commitment without action. So if you ask me, my sister, what do you need to do? You need to act. But the actions are varied now, and the actions depend on each individual circumstances. Some of us are here in Zimbabwe, so we're able to do what we are able to do. Others are not in Zimbabwe. Others are disabled. Others are totally paralyzed financially and otherwise. But they can pray. They can record messages on WhatsApp, on little videos, and so forth. So to me, the clarion call is for action, action against this bill. That action should include signing petitions, writing to various organizations against this bill. So for me, it's about action, 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 action. And that, Uncle Jedza, is my closing remark: action, action, and action.
Action, action, action. Iowa, thank you very much. Do you mind quickly, responding to the question of the percentage? What percentage do we require for winning? Is it like a referendum? Is it a 50 plus 1 or
No,
what is it?
It's not a 50 plus 1. It's just a simple majority.
A simple majority.
Yeah, and also it's not qualitative. In other words, 50 people can participate in that referendum. Just 50 people. So and if 26 of that 50 say yes, then it passes.
All right.
Yeah. So which is why it's so important for us to come in there in numbers, because there's no quantitative or qualitative process. It's just a simple referendum to be decided on the basis of a yes or no. There's a referendum act, which unfortunately gives the president the power, the overwhelming power of designing how the referendum is formulated. But fortunately, any referendum question requires one answer, a yes or a no. So they can't overcomplicate it.
Right.
Requires a yes
okay.
and it's very unlikely that they will put to the referendum clause by clause. I think they'll put the entire bill yes or no, as they did in the referendum of 10th and 11th of 2000, when we rejected the Siku Commission constitution.
Thank you very much. All right. Chieza, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes. Do you want to give your final remarks?
All right. But okay, I think I can. So, in closing, first of all, let me just thank our convener Tendai Biti and Prof Madhuku for coming onto this platform. In closing, I think let's to rally the question that was asked by one of the speakers. As Zimbabweans, let's do our best. If you have friends, if you have family that you can speak to, who are not able to join this platform, that you can go back to and conscientize on the perils of constitutional amendment bill number 3, please do so in earnest, because what we are now faced with, as Honorable Tendai Biti has said, and I have said so even on separate personal platforms in my own personal capacity, that for the longest time we have regarded Kukula Hunde's darkest period in our post-independence history. What we are now facing is threatening to equal it, because we are at a point where we are seeing steps to basically turn what has been a constitutional project into a monarchical type of system, a dynasty, basically, where elections are done away with altogether, right? And we cannot have that. We cannot have a situation where the voices of the people are treated as if they are, persona non grata, as if they are of no, like they are void or invalid, as if they do not matter, or of no consequence at all. So, the future of our democracy is at stake. The future of the children we are raising is at stake. The future of the constitution that really embraces the collective aspirations of the nation is at stake. And, this Agenda 2030 is just a step, it's just a means to an end. Remember, these are party resolutions that are being implemented. There's a whole resolution number 2, which really basically speaks to party supremacy of a government. And we do not need to have that type of a reality ever coming upon us as a nation. So, that would be my closing remarks. To say, let's conscientize others let's not just stop the advocacy on these Twitter spaces. The others who didn't join, tell them about this. If you didn't reshare, tell them about what you have learned today.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate. Mofute, that's over to you.
No, thanks, Ango. Thank you, Honorable Biti. Thank you, Professor Madhuku, for coming in, and speaking to the people. Appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I just want to encourage even the listeners as well. Kuti, let's keep on the pressure, guys. Sometimes it's not instant, but we have to be consistent. Let's continue to be a collective. We have to remain as engaged as we can as citizens as well. So I think the message is simple, and from what we can hear, let's stay involved. Let's not disengage until these things come to the end. When you listen to the majority of the people, you can tell what the Zimbabwean people want, and let's not our voice be fizzled out by a few people. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Angojet. Can close.
Oh, thank you very much. I want to say, as we close tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring us to the key aspect, to the key issue that has been at the center of this conversation with us, the citizens. We've been blessed, tonight. We've had powerful reflections on a process that has failed to honor the dignity of Zimbabweans. We've had how violence, intimidation, exclusion have distorted what should have been a constitutional moment, which is quite, important, because sometimes you live once, to experience, this. But we've also had something which is quite, deeper, and which is something that must occupy everybody's mind. That the disengagement that is being spoken about is not just it's not just disengaging. It's not just a retreating. It is an act of principle. It is a refusal to legitimize a process that does not respect the people of Zimbabwe. It claims to want to be consulting. And in that refusal, something important has been reborn and must be reborn. The understanding that the Constitution lives through us, the citizens of Zimbabwe. Not through these staged hearings that we are seeing, not through this orchestrated participation that we are seeing, but through the citizens, Zimbabweans, those who insist on being heard, like what we've been seeing, in the last 2 days, people crying to be heard through the communities, those who are going in as communities who are refusing to be silenced, through the organizations, like the organizations that, we've been blessed to be hosting, tonight, that are standing firm when the civic space is being narrowed. So to the leaders that have joined us, tonight, you've called for a citizen-driven, response. That is not a slogan. It is an invitation to organize lawfully, to speak loudly, to protect one another, and to reclaim the constitutional space that belongs to every Zimbabwean, whether at home or abroad. So in closing, as we leave this space, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to go with one truth and one truth alone. A constitution is not defended by documents. It is defended by its people. So to our speakers, thank you very much for the clarity and the courage. And to everyone who have listened or joined us, I want to thank you very much for showing that citizens are still paying attention to everything, that is happening. You are not a footnote. Remember that. You are not a footnote in this struggle. So stay safe, stay engaged, stay courageous, and good night.